So if you're anything like me, you have an idea for this awesome online game that you will have all your friends play and all your family and everyone in the world will play this online game and you'll get them all hooked together. The only one issue is you don't know how to network. You don't know how to make an online game, right? You can make a game, but you can't make it online. Well, in this tutorial series, I'm going to show you how to make an online game, have your friends connect, have your family connect, and even by the end, probably publish it to Steam and show how, you can turn your Unity knowledge into something that, everyone can enjoy at the same time in some kind of a asynchronous, fun pit where we're all playing the same game and having the same states and everything like that. This series is going to focus on creating an online card game. So think like Hearthstone or an online version of Slay the Spire, right? We're going to have a card game where we can play against our friends and, may the better man win. For this tutorial, we're going to be using Riptide Networking, which was created by Tom Weiland, which is a very low-level networking framework. It's not too low-level to where we get lost, but it has an API, and all we do is basically, I want to use the low-level framework so we can see what's actually going on behind the hood, and it'll help you better understand, what goes into a network game. We can manage basically different kinds of bandwidth, the variable types, and understand, how much bandwidth we're sending, how much bandwidth we're receiving, and kind of maximize our performance when it comes to creating an online game, because that's one of the most important things. Riptide is a UDP-based networking framework, which means that it transmits pretty fast, but it actually has a chance for the packets to be lost, as opposed to TCP, which can send as it can send a lot of data, but it's going to be slow, a lot of queuing, but you're guaranteed that stuff won't be lost. I think Tom Weiland actually uses a little bit of UDP and TCP throughout his framework, so we can actually see what's going on, and we can send some messages, less reliable than other messages, and get everything done right. When it comes to networking, you're going to want to understand something called like packets, right? A packet is kind of a message filled with a different amount of bytes. So a byte is just a collection of ones and zeros, right? It's 8 ones and zeros, 8 bits inside of a byte that have different on and off switches to tell you what value you're getting. So this is where binary comes in handy, right? So a byte is 8. And then a short number is 16. An int can be 32. A float is 64, right? So as you get larger, you're sending more data over the network. So in this lesson, we're going to try to minimize as much data as we can and pack as much as we can into little packages and then send them over. I think the best way to get this understanding is, you're sending and receiving things from the server. You're trying to package it in little packages so that it can be digested easily and you can send as much as you need. And we're going to get going. So I think we're going to start off with some project setup. So to get started, we're actually going to need 2 Unity projects. So we're going to create a client and a server. So, the server we'll just use 2D since we don't really need much. So we'll just call this, I'll call this card game tutorial server. Pick your directory. I'm going to put it here. I'm going to create another directory. So it goes inside of another directory. We'll call this card game tutorial, right? We're going to go in here and we're going to save our server in there. And then we're going to create another project as well. And we're going to create card game tutorial client. So we're going to have 2 projects, right? And I think I actually saved it in the wrong spot. So that's good. Once that's done initializing, we'll move it in there. So while that loads, actually, we're going to create a little Git repo inside of our master folder, right? So we can update everything at the same time. If you haven't seen my video about creating a Git repo and using Git, I would really recommend looking at that because it's very informative, and we're going to be using it, just to practice version control as well as go back if we have any issues. So I'm just going to go create a new repository. I'm going to call it card game tutorial, and this will be available for you guys as the videos come out. So if you're watching on Patreon, you're a week ahead. You'll get the week ahead kind of stuff that's required, and you'll be able to see all of this stuff. So let's go and do everything according to the video that I did. We're going to do public. We're going to create a new repository. All right, here we go. Now we're going to clone that into ours here. So we'll just do cmd git clone that. All right, and we're here. Take that, bring that out here, and delete that. One thing that is different from the video that I showed you is we're gonna have to modify our git ignore a little bit so that we don't get a bunch of these nonsense things. Since we're doing nested folder structure, we're gonna have to add a little bit. All right, so when you go to your git ignore, you're going to go to where you see the library and all this temp and all this stuff here. Let me make it bigger for you guys. All right, we're here. We have all this. We're gonna highlight and just do Shift Alt down. You can do multiple lines like that and just add that star. What that star does is it goes into any folder that has a library and ignores it, right? Same thing here. We're gonna do star, and here, star. Basically everywhere we want a star. Control Alt click also does the same thing. So star that. There we go. Let's do anything that's kind of there. These ones should be good. This one, sysinfo. Let's do a star. And crashlytics, a star. All right. So hopefully yours looks like mine with all these stars. That is the goal, right? That is the goal. That is what we want. And just save that and close it. Okay. Now, yeah, so this is still loading. Basically, this is supposed to be in here, so we'll move that in a second. All right, I'm just moving this in there. All right, perfect. So now we have that, we have this, and let's make sure that we are at the right spot here. So Unity Games, let's change the path. Let's remove that. Let's call this the right thing. Then we'll add it back. All right, so here we go. I am in the client and I have the server open as well. Both projects right here. The first thing we're gonna wanna do is install the Riptide package in both the server and the client, as well as remove the unnecessary packages. So I'm gonna post the link in the description to the Riptide, but basically all you do is take that link and paste it in here. It's a GitHub link, right? And you click add, and it adds the package. Also, make sure you're using Unity 2021.3.15 if you want to stay the same with me, because it changes a lot. All right, now I'm just gonna uninstall the packages I don't need. So for the client, I don't use Rider, so I'm gonna uninstall Rider. I'm gonna uninstall version control because we're using Git. I'm gonna uninstall visual scripting and then VS Code editor. It's also good to update your packages if you see them. You might as well just update them. Okay, so now let's do the same thing for the server. So go to Window, Package Manager, get rid of any ones that you don't use. So Rider, I'm getting rid of Rider. On the server, we're not gonna render any text, so we can remove Text Mesh Pro. I'm considering Unity UI, but let's just skip it for now. We got version control, remove that. Remove visual scripting, VS Code, then update these. And then finally add our Git URL the same way. So add package from Git URL right here. Copy paste it. So we're getting the Riptide. All right, I know it's a lot of setup, but in the server, we're gonna go to edit, project settings. Then you click on player, and right here where it says run in background, check that. And do the same thing on the client. So edit, project settings, player, run in background, okay? And now we're here, we're finally ready to go. So let's create a scene. I also have a layout here that if you want to copy my layout, I'll include that in the Git repo as well, but it just kind of lays things out in a way that I feel more familiar with. And so I like this a lot better. So let's clean out this project as well. We don't need the tutorial info, delete that. Delete the README. And we'll keep the rest. Sample scene, we can just rename that to be 00 login. It's going to be our login screen. We'll just reload that. That's good. And then on this scene here, we're going to create, we can just delete the camera and rename the scene on the server to be, we'll call it main, because the server is not going to have a lot of scene switching. All right, and I'm just going to change the layout here as well. Perfect, there we go. Delete the camera, save, so we get this. So now we've got a lot done. You know, we've set up the basic project, so now it's a good time to push. So we go to our command prompt. Remember, we type git add dot, adds everything that we need. Then git commit m, we can call this initial commit. Then git push origin main. And there we go. And now, so if you go to your GitHub here and we refresh, all of our stuff is here, no problem. We're ready to go. All right, so let's start developing. First, we're in our server here. You can tell right here, if you lose it, I'm also gonna put it on the screen. So let's create some scripts. Let's go to assets and create some folders. Say scripts. Let's create another folder inside of there. We'll call it multiplayer. And one more folder, we'll call it utils. All right, so here's that. Here's our multiplayer, here's our utils. We're gonna create a C# script in multiplayer. We're gonna call it network manager. And then we're gonna go in utils and we're gonna create a C# script called singleton. Singleton, yep. There we go. Now the first thing we're gonna change is the singleton one. And this is basically gonna be a generic singleton class that we can, keep declaring, and we don't have to go through like the classic singleton, instance, get this, get that. I acquired a class that does this for you. Pretty straightforward. I'll show you how it goes and how it works. All right, so this is just the generic singleton. If you want, it's basically I created a namespace, which is actually a very good thing for you guys to do. Create a namespace and put any of your utils in there. That way you have it really organized and keep going. Then the class is just a public singleton class where it declares an instance, private or protected, and a public instance. And then the getter, says if this instance exists. If this instance doesn't exist, create one. And if it does exist, then if it already exists, then just destroy it, right? And yeah, I'll just, if you need to copy it, just pause it and you can see the whole thing right here. But this we're going to be using a lot. All right, so now back to the server. So now back to the server, we're going to open up the network manager and we're going to delete everything inside and call our little singleton here. There's that. Oh, whoops. And then, see how it's red right there? We namespaced it, so just click on the singleton part, Alt Enter, and then using whatever namespace you decided, if you decided to use a namespace. And the first thing we're going to do is create the Riptide Networking, which is, there's already an excellent tutorial by Tom Weiland, but I'm gonna go through step by step what's going on. So we're gonna want to initialize the Riptide logger. That's the first things first, so we can get all the log messages and error messages that we get if we make any mistakes. So since I declared awake in the singleton as protected virtual, so now we're gonna override that. So we're gonna do protected override void awake. We're gonna get the base awake function, which creates creates the singleton and gets rid of any duplicates. And then we're going to initialize the Riptide logger. So there it is right there, Riptide logger dot initialize. And then we just put in our debug statement. So debug.log, debug.log, debug.log warning, debug.log error. I would love to include timestamps, so I'm gonna put true here. And that's that. Then we have to create a public server. This is for Riptide now. We're gonna do a serialized field, private ushort, which is like an int but less data, and I'm gonna call it port. I put the M underneath it. It's just what I like to do. I like it better than just having an empty, what is that called? Space there. But I just put the M there. It means a member variable. It's a private variable. So if you see that, you can stick to it. You don't have to. It doesn't matter. But it's just easier for me. Then we're gonna go to start. And in start, we're gonna create a new server. So server equals new server. And then we're gonna start the server. And so all we have to put in here is our port, and then how many people we want. So actually we can make that another variable as well. Let's do serialized field, private int m max players, right? So then we put that here. For the default port, we can put, I'm going to put 777. It's just a generally open port. This actually takes a ushort, so let's change that to ushort. And for max players, we can put a default value of like 10. That's fine. Okay. And then now we'll go to fixed update, which is where all the updates are going to happen from the server. And we're just going to call server.update. And that's our server function. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Now, basically, all we have to do is do the similar thing on the client. I forgot that. There we go. There's that. So now we're on the client. And if we wanted to, we could just go through and create the same kind of thing going on, right? But I like to work smarter, not harder, right? That's always a good thing. So let's go back to the server. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a little package here with our scripts that we just created. We're going to export them. And we're just going to export them to our base folder here. And I'll call it, transfer. So this will be useful for transferring, similar scripts back and forth, and we won't have to keep doing all the same work. Basically, all you do is open up the target, Unity application if we're on the client, then highlight the client, open up transfer Unity package. It'll bring you this. It'll open it up. And there we go. Now we have the same kind of thing going on. Since we're going to need a network manager, it's going to be a little different. We're going to update our client-side network manager, but, it saves us a lot of this trouble. So on the client, we're going to be doing different things here. So instead of a server, we're going to do public client. We're still going to have a port. We're not going to have max players. Instead, we're going to have a private string, and it's going to be an IP address, right? So IP address. Right now, we're going to use a local IP. So there we go. It already knew exactly what I wanted. So there's that private IP port. Then here, instead of all this stuff, we're going to do client equals new client. And then we'll just do client.connect. What we can do here is, let's go and create a connect. Let's change this to client first and foremost. Now we'll create a public void connect method. And in that, we'll call client.connect. And in there, we're just going to literally put a string. So we put, this builds our string. We put IP, colon, and then the port. And there's that. And then just to test it out, we can call the connect from here. But usually we'll call it from a button. All right, so now back in the Unity project on the client, we're going to create a empty network manager, and we're going to add our script to it. By default, it should have these values if you set it up correctly. And we're also going to create a folder called prefabs, just to make this easier. And if we ever want to delete something or something like that, we're going to call managers, right? We're going to pop our network manager in there, in that folder. And just to keep organized and everything like that, we're going to create an empty game object right here. And it's not going to have anything on it. It's just going to be kind of a splitter called managers. We can put our network manager underneath it. It's not a child of it, but it's right underneath it. And the rest of our scene is right there. So that way we can kind of, keep organized and keep everything going. Now on the server side, we're going to do the same thing. So let's create a network manager. Add our script to it. There's that. Our port and our max players are already filled out, so we're good. And then we will create just a quick one, prefabs, and we'll make one called managers. And we'll add our little boy here. There we go. So we have our network managers. So ideally, we should be able to connect. So we'll start the server. You see it started on port 777. Now start the client. And client connecting, and you should see connected successfully. And if you go into the server, you should see that the client connected successfully. if all of that worked, then let's just, for the sake of it, let's push our work to GitHub. So we'll say git commit. We'll give it a meaningful title. So we'll say client and server connect. All right. And this should upload for both of them. That's the good thing about having them in the same folder. And then we're going to push origin main. All right. So now it's on to the long haul here. We have this. We're ready to go. In the next video, we're going to be, creating a UI to connect. We're going to be connecting the server and the client and sending the username from the client to the server and back, so we can have a good communication. You can see how messages are sent and how messages are received. Very, very rudimentary, and it's going to be really good. So it's actually, it takes a lot to set up, but once we get going, it's going to be really fun. It's going to be really interesting, and you're going to see a lot of progress really quick. You're going to understand, the web that's required for these network games, and it's just really exciting to see, your work, be transferred over the wire, right, or over the internet, right? So it's really cool. If you really like this video, or if you want to keep up to date on the next one, just stay subscribed. If you join my Patreon, you'll have access to this course and all the next ones a week early, which is really interesting, really good for you guys. And yeah, just don't feel compelled. Just subscribe and follow along, and it'll come out when it comes out. It'll be pretty regular, and we'll have a full game in no time. So.